Welcome to Lime Rock Turn by Turn. As I'm sure you know, Lime Rock is a classic old school track and one that's a favorite of mine and many other drivers. And I always look forward to going to Lime Rock every year, which I've been doing for quite some time now that I think about it. In any case, we're going to dive right in to Lime Rock. I'm going to cover all of the basics. So if you're a student driver, you should see the line and the techniques that are needed. If you're an advanced driver, I'm going to emphasize where trail braking works and where it doesn't at Lime Rock. There are very few line subtleties other than some places where it's very easy to make a mistake. And so we'll talk about that as well. With all that said, as usual, the disclaimer that this is the best advice we can put together, but if you make a mistake, it's on you, as it always is when we're at the racetrack. So just a reminder for those of you in the lower groups, student groups, and plus blue plus white. The passing zones, most are right side only, the front straight, the main straight, if you will, no name straight in the back, which has now been renamed Paul Newman Straight, and the short chute after the uphill. Those are right side only. There's a short passing zone between Big Bend and the left-hander, between turns 2 and 3. And while it's permitted to pass on either side there, left side passes work much better than right side for most people. If you're giving a pass, just move to the right and then give the pass on the left. That way your line, you can drive the normal line, and the car taking the pass will be offline into the left-hander. So let's dive right in. Big Bend is obviously a signature turn and a very challenging one. A couple things to notice from the overhead view here. Number one, it's more than 180 degrees. And so it might seem like it is, and I always kind of felt like it was until I studied the map, but it's actually, and the sharpest part is the last bit, turn 2, if we split this into turns 1 and 2. And so since turn 2 is slower than turn 1, we drive this unlike a lot of other corners, because our whole objective here is to carry as much speed as possible into turn 1 and through turn 1 for that matter, and then slow down and set up properly for turn 2. So for that reason, we do a lot of trail braking, meaning we carry the brakes well into the turn, and then we balance the car on the throttle and get it to turn in and then accelerate out. So here's what that looks like, on the track. There are two basic approaches to getting into Big Bend. Actually, there's probably 100, but two main ones. I'm going to describe and show here the diagonal one where we start braking. Well, let me say it differently. Somewhere between 4 and 5 markers, we just point the car to the right slightly, to the right side of the bridge where the first apex in Big Bend is, and then we can brake on that straight line. It's a diagonal across the track, but it is a straight line, and one that we can brake on as hard as we need to. The alternative line is to continue straight down the left side of the track, brake at the appropriate point, perhaps again 5 or 4, and then turn in somewhere between the 1 and 2 markers. And if you're a student, your instructor will work with you on that. If you're an advanced driver, you should try both and see which one you like, and you may well have done that already. But many of us like the diagonal line, but others, think the staying left and then turning in a bit later Also on a bit of a diagonal, works a little bit better. Either way, we're going to end up at the same point in the middle of Big Bend. So here we are aimed at the right side of the bridge. Here we are a little bit closer. You can now begin to see where the apex is roughly under the P or the A from this distance in Park on the bridge. Now you can see the curb which juts out, and that's where the beginning of the first apex curb is, and we're going to run along that, and we can even run over that curb. It's one of very few curbs at Lime Rock, if not really the only one, that we really can and it's okay to run up on this curb. I'm not sure it gains a huge amount, but if you want to or choose to or end up on top of the curb, this is a friendly curb. The rest are not so much. So anyway, that gets us into Big Bend, and this is the first of two apexes in Big Bend, or the turn one apex, if you want to think about it that way. And as I said, we can run along that apex for some distance. But as we're doing that, we want to get the eyes completely around to the right. We want our head turned, so that we can see the flag station for turn two, which is not visible in this camera shot because the camera doesn't go that wide. But you can turn your head and easily see that flag station, which is a great reference point since that is actually right opposite the apex of turn two. So here we're running along that first part of the curb. And notice that we're not going all the way track left. We're going to stay kind of center track here, inside half, perhaps just over that. Certainly no more than 2/3 of the track. And the reason we do that is the camber. There's more camber on the inside half of the track, and so there's more grip and more traction here. So we're definitely gonna stay on toward the inside. And again, our eyes are around, looking at that flag station, and at this point, almost looking through it and past it. Now, as we get closer here, we are thinking about turning in for turn two, and many drivers adjust their line here with the throttle, with the gas pedal more than with the steering wheel. You can do either, but it's normally just a small line adjustment. Students, your instructor may ask you to just hold one steering arc all the way through Big Bend, and that's a great way to learn it. As we get a little faster, typically we're going to make a small adjustment here, often again with the gas, by simply giving the gas, which we're probably balancing the car with, giving a small lift or breathe, and that'll tuck the nose in when it's time to turn in. But it is very easy, and this is one of those places where Lime Rock sucks us in, very easy to be early on this apex. And we really have to be patient to get the car turned in, or we will run out of road. If you remember the overhead, this part of Big Bend comes back. And so while it may look like from where we're sitting in the car right now in the photo that it's just a 90-degree or less turn, it really isn't as gentle as we think. Now, I guess I don't have a photo here, but oftentimes on the apex here, sitting on the curb, will be two cones. And those are there, typically the track sets those out because we really do want to run along this apex curb for perhaps 10, 12 feet. That you'll hear that as repeated many times as we go around the track. There are apex zones on this track like there are on many others. And if we are able to run along that 10 feet or so, that will set us up very nicely for a nice exit out of turn two. So as we are exiting now, the track out is half to 2/3 down the exit curbing, kind of where the white arrow is in this slide. But as we're exiting, our eyes want to go up to a target up ahead. And we can look, for me is the red men's room building, since it's bright red and easy to pick up. We could just as well look at the flag station, which is immediately to its right, but it's not quite as visible as the men's room. But either way, we want our eyes, down there as we're exiting turn 2. Now, as we're approaching the left-hander, we generally want to be about a car width from the right side. Some people prefer to be all the way to the right here, and that's okay. But generally, I've found most people prefer to be about a car width, maybe even a little more in, from the right side. And the key with the left-hander is to understand that we are. Some people call it a throwaway. It's not a throwaway. It's a connected corner. We're driving it so that we can exit the following corner properly, which means we do not track out, and we are aiming to stay left. So that also means that we're going to be very, very patient here. So if you're an advanced driver, you'll find that entering this corner a little too fast, or entering it quickly anyway, and just letting a little bit of trail brake and the banking scrub the speed off is actually a good thing, because we can't do anything with this corner except set up the exit, so that we're properly lined up for the following turn. So carrying speed into this corner is fine as long as it doesn't mess up the exit. So finding a reference to turn in is a challenge for many drivers here. And it will help if you get your eyes around to the left, which, as you see now that we've moved a little bit around the corner, we want the car straight and the left side of the track as we're exiting past the apex curbing for turn 3. And if we get our eyes around there early enough and focus on that, that will help us know when to turn and avoid being early. But it's very easy to get in early on this corner and or too fast, because we run out of patience, basically. We need a lot of patience. That's why carrying speed into the corner actually helps, because it gives us less time to become impatient. But again, our eyes want to be at the exit, along track left, past the apex curbing here. And here you see that area where the paint kind of goes straight. And as the car straightens out here, we want to make sure the car is relaxed or comfortable. We don't want to be, still turning either direction. We want the car nice and straight. And once we approach the turn in, you can see the turn in where the cone is here, but you can also see that the white line on the left is worn off. That's a good indication of where the turn in point is, because that's where everybody's been driving. But as we approach the turn in, we're not going to do any brake at this point. We did whatever braking we're going to do back for turn 3. And in fact, we want to be accelerating at this point, but we're going to give a lift, or at least a breathe. And that's going to allow us to tuck the nose in and allow the car to turn and head toward the apex here of the right-hander. Again, our eyes should be way around to the right in this case. There's a flag station right under that big arrow on the right on this slide, and it's usually visible. Depending on the shadows, it can be kind of hard to see in the shadows of the trees that are behind it, but there is a flag station there, and our eyes should at least be looking at the flag station, if not beyond, at this point. Obviously, we're going to pick up the apex, but we want to have gotten our eyes well around to see where we're going. Now here's the apex. Again, very easy to early apex this corner. So need to be patient with the turn in, patient with the turn in hand speed, so that we don't jerk the wheel or crank the wheel in here. We just want a nice, easy turn in, because again, we should be accelerating some at this point, and we don't want to upset the car. this is also a good point to see the curbing. You can see that the curbing is not friendly here. We can hopefully run up pretty close to it, but if we actually hit that curb, I can tell you from experience, it will push the car out. This is not friendly curbing, so it's important to be precise here. And again, we want to run along this curb for a few feet, and one reason is that as we start to track out onto no name, the track goes off camber. Notice where the car is right now, and at the apex here, lots of nice camber, good camber, good grip. But at some point, well before the flag station, about halfway between the apex and the flag station, if you're online, you will find that it goes from favorable camber to unfavorable camber. And if you're pushing it at that point, that will be a very unpleasant experience because the grip difference is substantial. So that's an important reason, one of the reasons to avoid an early apex here. The other reason is the track is actually coming back. And so, there isn't as much room out there as you might think. But this sets us up for no name straight. I don't think I have a photo here of the kink in the middle where we're obliged to stay left if we're giving a pass signal, but otherwise we kind of straighten that kink out and head for the uphill. Now we're approaching the first of 3 fast corners, and these corners have a lot of similarities and some important differences. One of the similarities is that we're going to do the braking, and most of the braking in a straight line. In other words, we're not going to trail brake much. I'll talk about trail braking here in a moment. The other corners, we're probably not going to trail brake at all. So as we approach the uphill, depending on how much power your car has, this may be a gentle brake in a lower powered car, or it may be a harder brake in a powerful car. But either way, we want to do that braking in a straight line so that by the time we turn in here, the vast majority of the braking is done, and we're just in the process of beginning to trail off. So on a 1 to 10 scale, no more than a 2, maybe a 1 at the turn-in point here, for the uphill. And I should also point out this photo shows this tree on the left here, and that shadow has been a friend of mine for a long time. I'm told the tree is gone, which will be a sad experience when we get there shortly. But in any case, that used to be a nice reference that's not there anymore. So I noticed there's a couple of cones on the left in this photo. I'm not quite sure about this reason for the second one, but the first turn-in cone is approximately opposite the worker station here, and it should be just a little bit more than halfway, at least halfway down the curbing on the left here. And so if the cone weren't there, you could use the worker station as a reference. And but in any case, we want to avoid turning in early, and so that second cone is no doubt too late, but somewhere between the first and the second, or a few feet after the first, is probably good for a lot of drivers. If you turn in at where the first cone is, then it would want to be a nice, smooth, gentle, slow hands type of turn in. And as I said before, we're going to do a little bit of trailing, but as we get toward the apex, which is in the middle of the curbing on the right here, we want to be off the brakes and getting back on the gas, because the car needs to be on gas to be planted as we head up the hill. Now, the good news in the uphill is that as we hit the compression, which is just after the apex here, we can turn in more, and we want to turn in more. in order to get the car straight, because as we head up the hill, we want all four wheels pointed in the same direction. And that's, before we get to the crest, while we go over the crest, and after the car lifts and comes down. If we're not straight, bad things can happen. Because we're going pretty fast here, we're accelerating, and we need the car straight to go over the hill. And even if it is straight, if your foot's on the gas, in many cars, in all cars, the car is going to get light. In many modern Porsches, you're going to feel some wheel spin or feel the traction control kick in, unless you're very gentle with the gas pedal here. But as long as we're straight, that's not a problem. If we aren't straight, big problem. So some drivers like to be a little bit to the right of the white line that's on the edge of the track here, and that's okay, for margin. But it's much more important to be straight. Regardless of where we go across the crest here, the most important thing is to be straight. And here's about the point where we get some wheel spin. Next is West Bend, and this is a fast corner. You could call it a fast sweeper if you wanted to. And it's very easy in this corner to make. Some of the common mistakes here are to turn in too early, or to crab in, meaning to not stay all the way track left until the turn in point. And another common mistake here is to trail brake too far into this corner. This corner really doesn't need any trail braking at all. And it's fast enough. We want to get the car into the corner, at a good pace, and so that we can carry that speed and then begin to accelerate as we get past the apex. But we're going to brake in a straight line, and we're going to turn in, and the apex on this corner is easy enough to see from the turn in point. The track out, not so much, but we can see the bridge. And even earlier than this, we can see the bridge. So if our eyes are glancing around at the bridge, that's a good thing. And the apex is pretty easy to see here from this point. But again, you can see how if one were to turn in too early, or again with a jerk of the wheel as opposed to slower hands, we could be very early on the apex, which is not what we want. The apex here, again, is a zone, and this is a really easy zone to see with cones or without cones, because it's the crossover road. And so the apex is indeed the curbing right along where the road goes. Again, we're not going to be up on the curb here. It's not friendly, but we're going to run right along the curb for that whole, whatever that is, 15 plus feet. And that's going to position the car exactly where we want it. The eyes at this point should definitely be looking at the left side of the bridge, so that we know where we're headed. As we head, starting downhill, we want to be track left. And common mistake here is to veer a bit to the right and to be a foot or two or even more away from the left edge of the track. And when we come down the hill, we want the left side tire on that white paint. We want to use every inch of the road that's here. And again, we're going to brake in a straight line coming down the hill, and going to be off the brakes by the time we turn in or just after. And there's an easy turn-in reference here. As we come down the hill, the road flattens out, and and we'll feel it in the front end. And as you feel that compression in the front tires, it's time to turn. You can also see that the turn-in point is pretty much, look at where the cone is here for the turn-in. It's pretty much where the extra asphalt on the outside of the white line disappears. So, where the white line is up against the grass, that's approximately the turn in as well. So if you need a visual in addition to the feel for where the car compresses, that's a good one at this point. So we want to have our eyes looking down toward track out. This is another long apex. So this is definitely a fast corner, slow hands. So we want to turn in very gently and slowly so that we don't upset the car, and so that we just kind of bend the car into this corner. While there's not two cones here, this is another apex zone, and we want to run along the inside, the edge of that curbing there for some distance, another 10, 12 feet. And notice that as we're at the apex here, our eyes should be straight ahead, looking at that gap in the trees. And that's another nice reference that we have the car lined up. If we're looking to the left of that, we're early, and we need to be cautious. This is another place where the track goes off camber, just like it did going on to No Name. As we get about halfway between the apex and track out, we're going to go from favorable camber to unfavorable, and trust me, that has caught people out. And so we need to be ready, for that to happen. But our eyes should really, other than double checking that we're lined up to that gap, our eyes should really be well down track at this point, maybe even as far down as the bridge off in the distance. So some reminders, just to wrap up. Lots of trail brake into Big Bend and left-hander for experienced drivers and even students. Your instructor, you'll do that naturally. So if that doesn't make sense to you, don't worry about it. But if you're an advanced driver, these are corners that reward tons of trail brake. Just the opposite of the fast corners in the back part of the track. The track will suck us into an early apex in turn 2, and the right-hander, even to some extent the other corners. So it requires patience. It requires slow hands at the turn-ins on these fast corners. I've mentioned the adverse camber, and going on to No Name, exiting the downhill, even in Big Bend. The reason we don't use the outside, and even at the exit of turn 2, the exit of Big Bend, we go from that nice camber down at the apex to a flat or a little bit off camber at track out. So that can catch us out as well. So you saw cones in the video, and there'd probably be cones set up. The track usually has track cones out, but look for reference points that don't move. And so that, like I mentioned, places where the white line is worn down or something like that, that will help you. And also, I should have on the slide to beware of shadows, because the trees cast shadows at in very different ways at different times of the day at Lime Rock. So in some ways, driving the track first thing in the morning is very different, almost like a different track than in the afternoon, for example. So just be aware of that, and don't let it catch you out. But it can throw a nice reference point. One of those white lines, for example, that was in bright sun at one part of the day could be in a shadow another part, and that sort of thing is something just to be aware of. With all that said, Lime Rock is a fantastic track. One of my favorites. I hope it's one of your favorites, and I look forward to seeing you there. And at any time in the future. In the meantime, I hope you have a great day.